Okay, Wendy, it's 9.
It is indeed. It is indeed 9 o'clock. So I think we are going to get started, everyone. So welcome. Welcome and good morning, everyone. My name is Wendy Peterson, Director of the Senior Services Coalition of Alameda County. And on behalf of all of the Senior Services Coalition's member organizations and all of our collaborative partners, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all here today. I'm so happy to see so many community members in the room. I see stakeholders from the villages, from United Seniors of Oakland and Alameda County, from the Pool of Consumer Champions, from St. Mary's Center, and I see new faces and names and people from cities all over the county who I haven't had the privilege to meet. And I'm just so glad that you are joining us today, and that you're willing to bring your voices to the table to inform the next steps of an effort to make Alameda County a place where people can thrive as they age. So before we get started, let me share my screen. Bear with me, I'll get better at this as we go. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the people who have made today possible. First, a huge thank you to Alameda County Social Services Agency, to the Public Health Department of Alameda County Healthcare Services Agency, and to the California Collaborative for Long-Term Services and Supports, and also to the SCAN Foundation. I want to thank them all for their partnership and their assistance in putting this forum together today. I'd also like to thank all of our sponsors, Kaiser Permanente, Alameda Alliance for Health, Empowered Aging, and Choice in Aging. Without their generous contributions, this convening would not have been possible. So let's give everyone a round of applause, a virtual round of applause, clapping or fingers. Thank you very much. So before we begin today's program, it's important that we take a moment to remember Supervisor Wilma Chan. Wilma Chan was a champion for older adults, families, and people who are marginalized. She was also a partner in advocacy and a colleague for so many of us. Supervisor Chan was always there for us, using her fierce intellect, compassion, and humanity to address complex realities head-on. She was always challenging us to stretch and to speak up and to ask for what we need. When we needed to bring county leadership and stakeholders together to set a course to better address aging issues in a more integrated way, Supervisor Chan called a hearing and invited us into the room to create the agenda together. That hearing 7 years ago led to much of the progress and initiatives that we're here to talk about today. It was not a small thing. The loss of this irreplaceable champion is heartbreaking, but I know that I speak for so many of my colleagues in saying that our spirits are inspired by Wilma Chan, and we will keep her close as we continue to engage in the good work of shaping a community where everyone can thrive. I'd like to ask for a moment of silence just to remember Supervisor Wilma Chan. Thank you. As a way to honor Supervisor Chan, I would like to make another announcement. The Melissa Randolph and Wilma Chan Policy Advocacy Fellowship, made possible by a generous gift from Beth Jacob Fund at the direction of Kweli Kitwana. This fellowship will make it possible for a rising advocate to work at Senior Services Coalition under Quayle's wing, learning the issues and policy advocacy skills needed to advance solutions. This fellowship is our way to honor and remember these two champions, Wilma Chan, a public servant of the highest order, and Melissa Randolph, who, like many of you, was a caretaker to her family. We'll be sharing more information about the fellowship in January, so stay tuned for that. And now I'd like to turn to the reason that we're here today and give you all a sense of what to expect this morning. Today, you'll hear about the major progress that's been made in this first year of advancing California's Master Plan for Aging. Which is the 10-year blueprint to guide a restructuring of state and local policy, programs, and funding in order to better meet the needs of older adults, people with disabilities, and their caregivers. And you'll hear about the progress that's being made here in Alameda County by a collaborative effort to advance an age-friendly community plan and leverage master plan opportunities. So that's a lot of plans, just in 2 sentences, right? And I really want you to know that today is not about learning the details of the master plan or the age-friendly initiative. These are really just frameworks that are being used to organize the work and help us all to communicate and work together. What's really important today is that you hear about the actual projects, programs, and policy changes that are being worked on so that you can give us your feedback. Because these plans are not perfect. No plan is ever perfect. They require the continued engagement of stakeholders to shape the policy and programs to meet real needs of real people and to hold leadership accountable to do that. You, community members, you are the ones who can tap into your expertise as community members, as people living day to day, as stakeholders, as family members. You can tap into that lived experience, that expertise, and gauge whether the progress and the work that's underway is living up to its promise. You're the ones who can tell us if the tremendously destabilizing impacts of the pandemic are really being adequately addressed. You're the ones who can tell us if the work is centering equity or if it's leaving out groups of people. Today is your day. Tell us what really matters to you and your family, friends, and neighbors. We really need to hear you. Much of what you hear today will be framed using the master plan's 5 bold goals. And I'll share them right now. You see them on your screen. And you can see that they're broad and really very cross-cutting. They speak to housing, to health, inclusion, caregiving, and workforce, and economic security. And you'll hear references to these goals throughout the day. If you want to dive deeper and see the strategies and initiatives in this first version of the master plan, Danielle is putting a link in the chat to the master plan webpage. And it will be on the event webpage too. You'll find today's program on the website, but really, you know, just to make it easier for you, I'll give you a sense of the sequence of the morning. So first, you'll hear from some of our legislative champions and from the director of the state's Department of Aging. Then you'll hear about the significant investments that are underway in the significant investments and policy changes of the master plan's first year and what to look for going forward. along with the challenges in making it all work in the real world. And then we'll move to the local level to hear about the work that's underway in our county. And finally, we get to the heart of our time together, and about 11 o'clock, we'll give you the floor in small group listening sessions. And after that, return to reflect forward to next year. So we'll be asking you a lot for your reflections and your ideas at strategic points throughout the morning. We want to hear from you. We want to know, are we on track at the state level, at the local level? What are we missing? What's important to you? What does local and state leadership need to know as they set priorities for next year? So with that said, be ready to lean in and let's get started. So first we're really honored to hear from some of our local legislative leaders, and for that, it is my pleasure to hand the floor to my colleague, Kweli Katwana.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. Well, the primary goal for today's forum is to have your voices heard and provide an opportunity for you to partake in influencing and inspiring the Master Plan for Aging. We also want to hear from a few of our legislative champions. So we've continued to work with them in our efforts in advancing aging, age-friendly policies and budget priorities. These legislative champions represent a few examples of the work that we are doing to move forward the improvement of the lives of older adults. Some of these legislative champions have graciously submitted videos to express their support for the Master Plan for Aging. And we are honored to share with you all of their perspectives and plans. So let's take a moment to hear from Representative Barbara Lee, Senator Bob Wachowski, Assembly Member Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, Assembly Member Buffy Wicks, and Assembly Member Alex Lee. Before we start the video, I ask for you to adjust your volumes accordingly as we go through the 2-minute clips. And I thank you for listening to these, and most graciously thank our legislative champions for taking the time to submit these 2-minute clips.
Good morning. Thank you to Kweli for that very warm introduction. And I want to thank the Senior Services Coalition of Alameda County for hosting and inviting me to be a part of today's discussion on the California Master Plan for Aging. But let me take a moment to remember my friend, a great leader, Supervisor Wilma Chan. Like so many, I'm heartbroken. And I send my deepest condolences and love to her family, friends, and to Alameda County. We have truly lost a woman warrior, a true public servant. With a quarter of California's population projected to be older adults by 2030, it is vital that we begin to think and plan for what lies ahead. I absolutely support the Master Plan for Aging's 5 goals that we aim to reach by 2030. First, it is critical that we make sure housing is accessible for Californians of all age and all stages of their lives. I also agree that we need to reimagine our healthcare system to protect aging Californians from isolation, abuse, and exploitation, and to create and increase economic sufficiency for elders. And as a social worker myself, I'm especially excited about the goal of creating 1 million new high-quality caregiving jobs in our state. In reaching these goals, we will help all Californians to age with dignity, to be healthy, and to thrive throughout their lives. Thank you to the seniors and caregivers who are participating in this forum. And once again, thank you for inviting me to be with you for these few minutes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bob Wajkowski, and I represent the 10th Senate District in the California State Legislature. My district includes the southern portion of Alameda County and northern parts of Santa Clara County. I apologize for not being able to participate virtually with you all today. I'm currently in Glasgow, Scotland, as part of the California delegation at the COP26. That's the United Nations Conference on Climate Change. But first of all, I want to thank the Senior Services Coalition of Alameda County for convening this forum today. I thank you for your ongoing advocacy and work that you do throughout our community. One of your 5 bold goals for 2030 in your master plan for aging includes housing for all stages and ages. I serve on the Senate Budget Committee, and earlier this year, the legislature approved a robust budget, which included over $1 billion in various housing and homeless programs administered by the Department of Social Services, aimed at the most vulnerable California residents, including seniors and children living in poverty. $1.75 billion to alleviate the backlog in affordable housing construction. $300 billion for the preservation of our existing affordable housing, and over $800 million in investments to protect the older, vulnerable adults, including a roughly 28% increase in all state supplemental payments. That's the SSP grants. Other investments include increasing access to food and technology to combat hunger and isolation among seniors. As a member of the Senate Housing Committee, I'm proud to support legislation that aims to increase the construction of affordable housing units. I've also authored bills over the years that help streamline the regulation and the construction of accessory dwelling units. ADUs are affordable by design, and they assist seniors looking to downsize during their transition years. Additionally, the governor signed into law a bill that I authored in 2016, which made it possible to construct the Agri-Hood. That's a multi-generational inclusive housing development in Santa Clara. It's the first of its kind in Silicon Valley. Again, thank you all for keeping engaged with my office and your elected representatives. Together, we can help build and maintain an infrastructure that supports the needs of our aging population throughout the state of California. It's an honor and privilege to represent you in the Senate. Have a wonderful forum.
Hi, I'm Assemblymember Buffy Wicks, representing the beautiful East Bay. I'm thrilled to be here today to discuss the Master Plan for Aging, the blueprint for building a better California for people of all ages. All 5 of the goals included in the plan are critical, but I want to talk about goal number 1, housing for all stages and ages, because Californians need housing options that meet changing needs over their lifetime. This means more than just ensuring a roof over everyone's head, as crucial as that is. It means housing that allows for different household sizes, accessible transportation options, strong climate and disaster readiness, and more. We need more housing options for people at all stages of life. We need more housing, period. California's ability to produce, protect, and preserve affordable housing, including ADUs and residential care facilities of all sizes, will support older adults, caregivers, and their families. We need more transportation options beyond cars, both to help slow climate change and to help adults live where they choose, especially after experiencing a decline in mobility or the ability to safely drive. And we need to improve access to community spaces that are walkable from one's home. We need community design that improves our ability to remain safe during disasters like wildfire and public health crises like COVID-19. Because while all Californians are impacted by them, some, including older adults, are more vulnerable to these dangers and health consequences. These critical components of the Master Plan for Aging create a lens through which I and my colleagues in the state legislature must approach all policy choices in 2022 and beyond. I am strongly committed to pushing hard in the Assembly to meet the goals in this plan, because Californians at every stage of life deserve access to safe and affordable housing options, and to be able to age with dignity in the communities they call home.
Hi, I'm Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Cahan from the 16th Assembly District, and I am so proud of the work my colleagues and I have accomplished with the governor to assure funding to address California's aging master plan. We focused on housing, healthcare, recovery from isolation, caregiving, and the ability to age with dignity and grace. This year's budget has over $300 million in it to meet California seniors' wellness and aging. On top of that, the budget included $1.5 billion in ongoing funds for Medi-Cal, These are critical investments to ensure that our seniors have access to the healthcare they need. The Aging Master Plan addresses critical needs, from nutrition and long-term care planning to disability services and technological access. The continued administration of these vital programs and services will enable our loved ones to age with dignity. The pandemic has also highlighted the importance of connection to our loved ones, to our friends, and to our communities. Our seniors have suffered from isolation during these difficult times, and that is why we invested over $100 million to strengthen older adults' recovery and resilience from isolation and the health impacts caused by this and the pandemic generally. I remain committed to an equitable recovery for our most vulnerable Californians. And it is an incredible honor to represent you in Sacramento and do this important work every day. Thank you for the work you do, and I look forward to our continued partnership.
Hi, I'm Assemblymember Alex Lee, and I represent the 25th Assembly District, which includes Alameda County and Santa Clara County. I'm proud to be taking part in the California Master Plan for Aging and Community Forum today so that we can begin the discussion of how to support policies that promote healthy aging. The 5 bold goals for 2030 in the Master Plan for Aging are aspirational and serve as a framework for how we will need to prepare the state of California for the coming demographic changes and support of our aging population. I want to highlight the first 2 goals of the Master Plan for Aging today and what steps we're taking to achieve them as the state of California. The first goal is to ensure that we have housing for all stages and ages is crucial to our quality of life. A safe and affordable place to live should be a fundamental human right, not a privilege. That's why I'm so proud to sponsor AB 387 to implement social housing right here in California. In order to provide new housing options to age well, we will need to create mixed income, safe, and dignified housing for all strata of society, and California can lead a national paradigm shift. I also appreciate the second goal, which is to reimagine health. With life expectancy in the US slightly declining since 2014, we must also reimagine health to close equity gaps and treat long-term health elements. The pandemic has been a stark reminder of the vulnerability of Californians living and working in skilled nursing facilities, as well as having healthcare tied to employment. All Californians should have access to quality, affordable healthcare. And that's why I'm proud to be a joint author on AB 1400 CalCare to guarantee comprehensive universal healthcare services to all California residents. All 5 goals of the master plan are bold and needed as we plan for the future, and I look forward to doing everything I can to make this a reality and make California a great state to age in. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And with that, I will have Wendy introduce for us our next speaker, who is Susan DeMorris, and hand it over to you, Wendy.
Thank you, Quayle. Yes, we are so pleased today to welcome Susan DeMorris, who just recently joined the California Department of Aging as its director on November 1st. So she is definitely the newbie in the room. So welcome, Susan. It's so nice to have you here. I just wanted to let people know that there is a full bio of Susan in your programs, but I think I just wanted to give you a little bit of introduction so everybody knows who you are. Prior to her new role as CDA director, Susan led public policy and advocacy for the Alzheimer's Association in California, advocating for legislative, budget, and regulatory changes on behalf of the 2.1 million Californians who are directly impacted by Alzheimer's disease. Susan championed the effort to implement the Healthy Brain Initiative in California, and she served as an appointee to Governor Newsom's Alzheimer's Prevention and Preparedness Task Force. So you can read more about her in the Forum program, but Susan is you know, an awesome champion, and we are so pleased to have you as a partner at the Department of Aging. So Susan, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wendy. You are a phenomenal leader and advocate and an outstanding representative of Alameda County and the state of California. So thank you for this invitation. It was the first one I received and I said, yes. I grew up in Alameda County, so has a special place in my heart. And I see a lot of familiar faces in the participant list. I also want to thank the coalition to the 115 of you who are gathered here today. And I know there are many, many, many more members of our aging and disability community who are working with you and aren't with us today. When Wendy started out, she said, today is your day. And I couldn't agree more. And I want to back that up by saying, this is your plan. This master plan belongs to all of us and to all of California. So I couldn't be happier that you're taking time out today to focus on the master plan. Of course, you know, Alameda County, I wouldn't expect anything less of this county to already be reflecting back on the first year of the master plan and planning ahead for next year. This county has a reputation, and the leaders who spoke by video demonstrate that. Alameda County has a reputation, a very, very good reputation for being first, and not just alphabetically. You always show up first on the list of counties, but you've been forward thinking for many, many years. And I just want to thank you for the outstanding work that preceded the master plan for aging. I know that you are not new to this work, and this is just a continuation of good work that's been happening for years and years and years in Alameda County. So I wanted to just give, you know, I love the title of today's gathering, Perspectives, using the word perspectives. And I want to underscore how important it is for, you know, in the time that you're together, that you share your perspectives from wherever you're coming from. You know, please share your lived experiences, diverse viewpoints, do everything you can to keep us focused, person-centered in our focus of the master plan, equity-focused, and share all of your real-world examples. Stepping into this role and following the extraordinary and exceptional Kim McCoy-Wade, who preceded me and led the master plan for aging. My greatest fear is that people will think, oh, the master plan is done, let's move on. And it absolutely is not done. It's just beginning. It's a roadmap for our future, our, you know, the next 10 years. It's a blueprint, as Wendy said. And we've been giving a lot of thought. We'll be having a legislative hearing in January to mark the 1-year anniversary of the launch. And so we've been playing around with some words. You know, it really started, the first phase of the master plan was mobilizing. This was a grassroots effort that was, you know, led by the community with strong support from foundation partners. West Health, the SCAN Foundation, and others helped mobilize the We Stand for Seniors campaign. Then there was the initiative phase, and we were able to convince candidate Newsom, who became Governor Newsom, to issue his executive order. Then there was the long development phase, you know, about 18 months in the midst of the pandemic. And then there was the launch on January 6th, where it was unveiled and released to the community. And we don't want the next phase to be called implementation. That sounds like a real snoozer. We want it to be a lot more dynamic and active and vibrant and organic. So we welcome your thoughts on what this new phase of year 2 should be as you're talking with each other. We're open to ideas, and most importantly, we want to invite you to please stay engaged, please be vocal, and where you can, you know, steer us in the right direction. When you look at the master plan, those 5 goals, the initiatives, all of the recommendations, tell us where we need more of what's in there, where we need less of what's in there, and then also look at the plus. You know, what did we overlook and what's missing? Are there any gaps? So we want to hear from you what you want more of, less of, and then what should be added as we move forward with this 10-year blueprint. So thank you for including me in your morning. I hope you have a great day. Can't wait to hear from Wendy and others about what was discussed in your time together, and look forward to working with all of you in the years to come.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan. It's lovely to hear from you. And yes, a report will be coming your way. So now it's time to move to our first session. And I want to introduce my colleague, Shawnee Reynolds. Shakura Shawnee Reynolds is a management analyst in the Alameda County Social Services Agency, Adult and Aging Services Department. She's a colleague who works with me and all of our other stakeholders. She's really the bedrock support for the Alameda County Council for Age-Friendly Communities, and helps to coordinate this very diverse group's efforts to affect policy and systems changes that enhance the well-being of older adults who live in the county. So I'm going to share my screen for just a moment with you. Shawnee is going to be introducing Sarah, and we're going to be hearing about the California Master Plan for Aging and its first year wins. So Shawnee, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. And I am so honored and privileged to be here today and before you all and to be a part of this piece of the program. And I just want to start us off with framing a little bit of this piece of the program. Senior Services Coalition convened us all here today so that we can better understand the local impacts and potential of the Master Plan for Aging's framework. We thought best to first bring a statewide policy perspective, major legislative, budget, and other achievements that have happened in the MPA's first year. And to do so, we have a wonderful speaker presenter here with us this morning, Sarah Steenhausen, who is the Director of Policy and Advocacy with the SCAN Foundation. In Sarah's role, she partners with stakeholders, policymakers at both the state and local levels to develop, inform, and advance policy solutions to improve the systems of care serving older adults and people with disabilities. And I had a privilege of meeting Sarah prior to this, and she's wonderful. So you guys are in for a treat this morning. We're going to just set some expectations. We've asked Sarah to give us a very high level look at the progress made in the first year of the MPA. So this is implementations, what we see going forward in 2022. Then we'll have some time afterwards, after Sarah's presentation, to field your questions and comments via the chat. And I have to do a reminder of the gracious chat box and encourage everyone here this morning to participate. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts. If you have questions, if you have concerns, or any just bold and bodacious ideas for us this morning, use the chat box. We're going to have a short time after to have some questions with Sarah, but I also want to remind everyone of the heart of the presentation, or sorry, heart of the conference later, which is the small forums and group listening sessions. So have no fear. If we don't get to your questions in this piece of the forum, we're going to do our best throughout the day and also later this afternoon to field all of your questions, thoughts, ideas, and concerns. And Wendy and Quayle, if there's no other housekeeping rules or reminders, I'm going to hand the floor to Sarah.
Well, thank you so much, Shawnee. What a tremendous honor it is to be here. I've always been such an admirer of the work of the Alameda County Senior Services Coalition, the tremendous leadership that Wendy and Quayle bring to this group. It's phenomenal. I think you all serve as kind of a model for what effective local regional collaboration looks like. And so thank you for your years of hard work. It really does make a difference. So today I'm going to provide a very high level overview, as Shawnee said, of where are the big first year wins. I think that there's a lot to discuss, but I want again to emphasize something that Wendy said. You're going to see a lot of different program names and initiatives up on the screen. Don't feel like you need to memorize each of them. In fact, I'm not going to even be speaking to each of them. I'm going to kind of be pulling out the main importance of the general initiatives and what it means for you at the local level. So with that, we'll have the next slide, please. So I want to start with kind of a background and context, because I think it really helps frame what this first year of the master plan for aging has meant. And then, of course, I'll spend the bulk of the time assessing the progress across the 5 bold goals. And then a little bit of time at the end about thinking about what this means from your work right now and where to go from here. Next slide. So I want to talk, as I said, a bit about the crisis and the opportunity from the past year and a half. Next slide. So it's no surprise to anybody here what a tremendous, difficult time it has been for older adults, people with disabilities, particularly the Black, Hispanic, Indigenous, Latino populations that were hardest hit by COVID, all the while shining a light on tremendous health disparities, racial inequities throughout our nation. But I think that what it did at the same time is it shined a very harsh light on the realities that have been confronting not only our long-term services and support system, but the broader system for years that hadn't been discussed. And I think that it was while we were in the middle of kind of the development and stakeholder engagement process, while COVID hit, I think what it did is it helped inform the plan's development. And it gave stakeholders the opportunity to say, see, these are the problems we're talking about. And this is why we need such significant system change. Next slide. So it's just pretty phenomenal to see the opportunity that has been brought about today. The investments.
This is Eleanor. How are you?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I just got me. Okay, there we go. The investments at the federal level. Am I muted? It says I'm muted. No, okay. The investments at the federal level are unprecedented, particularly the American Rescue Plan Act set aside significant resources for state level investments in home and community-based services. Our state budget showed a lot of promise in terms of the resources that were dedicated to the Master Plan for Aging, thanks to an improved fiscal outlook. But also most importantly is that all of the crisis of the past year and a half plus really rooted all of the state's efforts in equity, so that equity is baked in throughout the master plan for aging. And that is something so important. And I think what I've heard some of the state leaders talk about is thinking about what are the equity implications of each of the policies that are outlined in the master plan for aging and how to prioritize that in all the work that we do. Next slide. So now I want to kind of dig into the heart of it, which is how we assess the progress of the first year of the master plan for aging. Next slide. I would say that it was really historic, with investments that we have never seen in our aging and long-term care system, and offers a very strong start for the first year of the master plan. But as Director DeMorris said earlier, this by no means means that our work is done. It is not. We are just beginning, but it's very exciting because I think we have a strong launch pad for our work in the years ahead. Next slide. So what I'm going to do right now is kind of walk through each of the 5 bold goals and talk about some of the really important initiatives in each of those to give you a sense of where some of the opportunities are. But again, recognizing that these investments, these system change opportunities among themselves are not sufficient to implement the entire master plan. We still have a lot of work to do, but at least it offers a great start. Next slide. So goal one, housing for all ages and stages. And I really appreciated how Senator Wachowski and Assembly Member Wicks talked a lot about the importance of housing. And it's not just about housing, it's about transportation. It's about ensuring that people can live in age and disability friendly communities. So there was no error in placing housing as the first goal in the master plan for aging. All of the goals are a priority, but I think the state recognized that this is a pretty emergency issue that needs to be addressed, because it's not just about housing. Housing impacts your health, it impacts your access to other services and supports. So again, we need to figure out a way to ensure that older adults and people with disabilities can remain in their homes and not be at risk of losing their homes. But also for those who are currently unhoused, how can we ensure that they can access affordable, accessible housing? So significant investments in a number of different initiatives. You heard through COVID, the Project Room Key, which converted some hotel rooms into housing for people who were unhoused. And from that grew Project Home Key, which is an initiative to purchase a number of different units of buildings and convert them into affordable, accessible housing for individuals who are homeless. There's a significant initiative run out of the Department of Social Services to expand access to board and care homes, the small rest care facilities for the elderly, or RCFEs, to acquire and rehabilitate so that you can have greater access so that people who are currently at risk of homelessness or currently unhoused can access services in a small community-based setting. With that are these new pilots called the community-based residential continuum pilots. I think the state has envisioned that these pilots would bring services into the new and acquired rehabilitated community care facilities, so that you have housing with community services and supports linked together. We also have seen a number of investments into programs that help people who are in the APS program or at risk of being in the APS program remain in their homes so that they don't need to be at risk of homelessness as well. Services like the Housing and Disability Advocacy Program that help individuals who are on SSI or need SSI, help them to access the services they need to, again, get the housing and supports that they need. A promising new pilot opportunity that will be run out of the Department of Aging to enable older adults to live in family homes. This is modeled off of the Department of Developmental Services Adult Family Homes project, where you have individuals with developmental disabilities living with families. So it might be for a lower level need of an older adult who just needs housing and maybe some food preparation and other supports, but not significant supports. It's filling a need that I think is currently unmet, and it offers a really important opportunity for older adults to access housing that's affordable and accessible. And then finally, an important new program that's being run in conjunction with our Medi-Cal managed care programs is called the Housing and Homeless Incentive Program. And without getting into the details of this, the reason that it's really important is because it's giving our Medi-Cal managed care plans that are responsible for the healthcare services delivery for people on Medi-Cal, as well as some dual eligible individuals. It's enabling them to have incentives to develop the housing and access to affordable, accessible housing that people need at the local level. So the importance of this is that managed care plans are now playing an important role in helping acquire and house people who are currently homeless. So the importance of that is, again, looking cross-sector. Housing is not just about building new housing. It's about looking at supports across the continuum and bringing in our healthcare delivery system as well. Next slide. So the second goal of the Master Plan for Aging focuses on reimagining healthcare. This does not just mean reimagining how services are delivered in the medical care arena. It looks at how we can better integrate services across the long-term services and supports continuum with the healthcare continuum. There were significant investments in this area in the budget this year. Expansion of Medi-Cal to undocumented older adults aged 50 plus, an elimination of our Medi-Cal asset test, which is significant for older adults and people with disabilities who otherwise would have had to really impoverish themselves to get onto Medi-Cal. So that will be rolled out over the next few years. A number of initiatives in Alzheimer's prevention and preparedness. A lot of that work came out of the governor's task force to prevent and prepare for Alzheimer's. An establishment at the Department of Healthcare Services of a new Office of Medicare Innovation and Integration. This is really important because, as you all know, we have about 1.5 million older adults in California and people with disabilities who are eligible for both Medicare and Medi-Cal. These are our dual eligible individuals who have the greatest needs for more integrated service delivery. The Department of Healthcare Services is taking the lead to kind of integrate services and innovate in this area, which is something the state has never done before. New telehealth flexibilities that were born by our experience with the pandemic, as well as an expansion of geriatric workforce training, and last but not least, modernization of our state's health insurance counseling and advocacy program, which you all know provides vital services to help Medicare individuals understand what their options are for health care coverage. Next slide. Goal 3, I wanted to focus on, goal 2, this is more of the long-term services and supports and home and community-based components of this goal. The ones that I just outlined are more the specific healthcare components. A number of investments in the in-home supportive services program, but I just wanted to call out what is super important is that the state eliminated the threat of a 7% reduction of across the board services in the in-home supportive services program. So again, that really stabilizes the funding for that program. Some investments very much needed for the multi-purpose senior services program. And a very important investment to expand our aging and disability resource centers statewide. This is important because the state envisions these resource centers kind of being a hub where anybody can go who has a question or a need for services in the aging, for home and community-based services or for long-term services and supports. Right now, people don't know how to access services or where to go. And it's envisioned that these will kind of be the hub of where services are delivered. And, you know, I would say about 4 or 5 years ago, we had no state funding, or 3 years ago, for these programs. And now we have a significant investment of state resources, and the state has doubled its commitment to making sure that we make our system more navigable for older adults and people with disabilities, anyone who needs LTSS services. Another promising development is enhancing capacity of our assisted living waiver, eliminating the wait list so that people who are on Medi-Cal can access assisted living. New funding for our Alzheimer's daycare resource centers, where previously there had not been any general fund dollars for a number of years. And then something that was mentioned by one of the legislator representatives is a significant investment at the local levels for older adult resiliency and recovery. And essentially what this does, it provides over $100 million statewide to the area agencies on aging to invest in the services and supports that older adults need to maintain their independence in the community. And then finally, some really important efforts to make data more accessible at the state level for understanding the needs and use and services across our long-term services and support system. Next slide. For the third goal, the focus really is on ensuring that older adults and people with disabilities can be included and have opportunities to engage in society, and that we address elder and disability abuse and focus on access to the services that people need in the community. We have the expansion of the Adult Protective Services Program, an establishment of a new office at the Department of Aging that will represent patients in long-term care settings who currently have no one. They don't have a family member or a friend that can advocate for their needs. These are individuals who lack the capacity to make their own decisions, and the department is setting up a unit to advocate for those individuals. number of investments to increase access to technology for older adults and people with disabilities. That's really shown was critical during the pandemic. We saw that many people don't have broadband access. They don't have the hardware that's needed, the tablets to connect with people outside of their home. So that's something the state's investing in. And in terms of ensuring that all people can access the services they need, there's a big investment in improving language access services. A lot of times, people either speaking different languages or people who have different needs to access services can't understand what programs and services are out there. So the state's really investing in improving language access. And then finally, the state just launched its first Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council, which is being run by the Department of Aging. And that was one of the key initiatives in Goal 3. Next slide. So for Goal 4 is focusing on the really critical need to support our caregivers who provide critical direct care support to older adults and people with disabilities. This includes both paid caregivers like our IHSS workers, as well as unpaid caregivers who are family member or friends that provide a lot of the services and supports to people at home and in the community. A number of investments to build career pathways for people who are direct care workers so that they see incentives to stay in this line of work. A lot of resources that are going to go towards providing training and stipends to people who are in the direct care workforce, and some care economy payments as a kind of a recognition of the tremendous work that both IHSS and non-IHSS direct care workers had to do during the pandemic. They're going to be getting $500 each for those services. And also investments in our home and community-based clinical workforce to grow that workforce that's so important at the community level, expanding access to our traumatic brain injury program, and investing more resources into the critical services provided by our caregiver resource centers that support family caregivers in the work that they do. Next slide. And finally, the Goal 5 is economic and food security. Of course, tremendously important and very important for equity purposes is fighting poverty and ensuring that people have resources they need to age with dignity and independence. So they're wonderful to see a grant increase to our SSI SSP program. Of course, California still has a ways to go. In that, we're not quite where we should be, but at least it was a step forward. And significant investments in senior nutrition, both in terms of funding infrastructure development, but also in expanding access to home delivered meals. Streamlining access to the CalFresh program and expanding the California Food Assistance Program. These are critical investments. People need food and income security to live and age with dignity in our state. Next slide. And finally, and I think really importantly, something that the stakeholders spoke a lot about during the development of the master plan is the importance of state leadership. Really needing somebody in the governor's office to be the key leader on these issues and to work across agencies. These issues are not just about health and human services. They're about housing and transportation and labor and workforce. So what's so exciting is the governor appointed the first senior advisor on aging, disability, and Alzheimer's, which is Kim McCoy-Wade, the previous director of the Department of Aging. And she's just going to be incredible in advocating for these issues at the governor's office level, which will really help launch the master plan efforts. And then also what's exciting is that there were significant investments in the state level leadership at the Department of Aging. So Susan's going to be leading a team of people focused on implementing the master plan, which is really critical given all the different moving parts. Next slide. So I just went through a ton of information, and I was seeing some of the chat coming through. I know there's a lot of questions about individual programs and where they are in implementation. All excellent points. I think, again, the point is that each of the programs were funded, and some are already existing programs that are just getting supplemental funding, and others are new programs that haven't yet launched. Not to get confused by all the little details, but to understand where the opportunities are and to see that our work really isn't done yet. Next slide. So where are there new opportunities to continue fighting for? Well, I think that we know that we still have to focus on fighting poverty for older adults and people with disabilities. Tremendous challenges that people face right now that can't be forgotten. Home and community-based services. We know that many people who need home and community-based services still cannot access them. And even with these investments, there will still be tremendous gaps in the system on a statewide basis. We need to develop our home and community-based services infrastructure. You know, if you look at some of the rural areas of our state, they're without access to services. And there's high populations of older adults and people with disabilities who live in those communities who can't get the services they need. Oh, sorry, previous slide, please. We need to do more on accessible transportation. This is something I saw a lot about in the chat. You know, the master plan, I think, definitely has opportunity to increase its focus on transportation. And I think we've heard that from a lot of community members, so encourage you to speak out about that. And also, we still need to do more for housing for older adults and people with disabilities. These are significant investments, but I still believe that there's a tremendous need, and there are some proposals going forth to, for example, develop a affordable a rental assistance fund for older adults and people with disabilities. So those are just some of the opportunities that I think are still out there to keep fighting for. Next slide. But I also think it's important to think about where we are today. It's going to be so important for all of you to play a role in these different initiatives in ensuring that the state is implementing them in the way as intended. And I kind of feel like the state is working super hard to develop new initiatives, supplement funding for existing programs, change the system. So it's kind of like building a plane while you're flying it. And there's a lot of implications for state and local capacity. You know, I've heard some people at local levels say, this is all wonderful. All of these system change opportunities are amazing, but it's the same people at the local level that are responsible for it. So what does that mean for local capacity? What do you need at the local level to ensure that these programs and services can be implemented in a way as attended? So a lot of considerations for planning and implementation, and some of these investments need to be expended in a short time frame. So there's timeline considerations. You want to do something well, but you don't have a lot of time to do it. So next slide. So I think that the work you're doing today is so critical, is figuring out how you can continue to work together to develop your voice locally and help with the implementation of some of these initiatives, engaging cross-sector, working with health plans, working with housing providers and transportation, identify areas for more improvement, and what are the ways that you can coordinate your collective messages so that you can put your input in at the state level. They really, as Susan said, want to hear from you. What are the problems? What are the issues? And what needs to be done? So I think that I'm happy to take any questions. I don't know how much time we have, but thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And here's some resources that I know that you have in your materials, but wanted to make sure you knew where to go for some more information on the number of things I just covered.
So, Sarah, we do have some questions in the chat, and this one is from, I'm just going to go off of what Zoom is telling me, so forgive me if I misspeak your name or misread. It's Art Vital Link Medical Alert Systems. And the question is, what is the proposed expansion for Multi-Purpose Senior Services Program, MSSP? It seems that this is a cost-saving program that effectively helps keep our seniors out of skilled nursing facilities.
Yes, MSSP is a really critical program. It's, I'm sure you all know, a 1915C Medicaid home and community-based waiver program that provides care coordination, some services to help people stay at their home in the community. But the number of people that it served is quite limited. And what the budget did this year is it stabilized the rates and increased access. There wasn't an expansion, say, per sites, but I can follow up with the specific details. It essentially was an important investment to help stabilize the program. Those programs could be made, but it wasn't a vast expansion of the number of slots. I still think there's a lot of work that needs to be done to increase access to programs like MSSP.
And there's, I saw earlier in the chat, I was reading while we were ramping up and getting started, and it seems to be a lot of concern or just curiosity around support for family caregivers and caregiving in general. Can you just maybe spend a little bit more time going
Sure.
over some of the supports around caregiving and family caregivers?
Absolutely. I wanted to focus longer on that goal 4, which is the caregiving that works goal. I cannot underscore the tremendous crisis we're in at the state right now. I think across the country, frankly, workforce challenges. People can't access the support that they need because there aren't the workers. So this impacts both the paid caregiver workforce, like the in-home supportive services, and home and community-based service providers that have direct care workers, but it also is impacting family caregivers. So, we need to figure out ways to ensure that our family caregivers who are providing the critical services and supports and are not being paid for it and are trying to balance their own employment needs, can get the services and supports they need. So I would call attention to the investment in our caregiver resource centers over the past few years. That the state has increased funding for that program. I still don't think it's enough to support the needs of all of our family caregivers. I think we need a lot of options for respite care. And I think we need to also figure out ways to really double down and solve this direct care workforce crisis. There were a number of investments in the budget on it. And I think that a lot of times the unpaid family caregivers need to call in support. But if they can't access the paid support they need, then they're still in a really difficult challenge. So, Secretary Galley at the Health and Human Services Agency has said recently that this is the state's #1 priority right now. It's at crisis proportions. So you're absolutely right. We need to be doing more. And I think the state is pretty much at an all hands on deck approach right now, looking for more opportunities to, beyond they're funneling resources into training and to stipends to pay and to incentives to the workers. I've also heard people say, until we pay people living wages, this is going to continue to be a crisis. So a lot of significant implications. Thank you for raising that.
And so this is a clarifying question. Some clarity around which of these items have been implemented, are being considered, are designed, etc. We just want some clarification.
Yes, I know. And that's the danger of these sorts of presentations where I just throw out a lot of information at once. What I can say is that everything I spoke about has already been funded. They have received the funding through the state budget. Okay. Where it varies across program is that some of these are existing programs that got additional funding. Some are new programs that are currently being developed. So in the resources that I provided in the list, you can get more specifics on where each of these are and what are the new opportunities versus the existing programs that just got additional funding. And I hope that somewhat answers that question, but I can imagine it's confusing because it's a ton of information being thrown out at once.
Sorry, we have some individuals agreeing with you. And so this one is a question in regards to data and information. So it says, if access to data and information about the full range of services is important across all 5 goals,
Yes.
under which goal is it addressed in a unified, comprehensive manner?
Yeah. That is so important. So I'd say a couple of things. Data is really cross-cutting, I think, through all of the goals, but So there's some initiatives, as I mentioned, in the LTSS area to make LTSS data more transparent and accessible. And it sounds really boring, but it's actually really important, as you just said, because without understanding how people are using services across the continuum, you don't know where the gaps are and you don't know where the needs are. So the state is really focusing on bringing together all the data across the programs so that we can do just that. And so that people at the local level can see where the need is at the local level, and at the state level can also see that. I'd also say that data is critical for monitoring oversight, monitoring implementation of the master plan. And if you look in the master plan, there is something called the data dashboard for aging. So that's essentially data that has been developed and different indicators across each of the goals to assess the state's progress in implementing the master plan. That too is an example of a plane that is still being built while it's flying, because the state has put a tremendous amount of effort into developing this data dashboard, but they also recognize that we don't have all the data we need to actively assess whether we're meeting the goals of the master plan. So this will also be a work in progress, but you're absolutely right. It's critical to have access to the data. And again, I think the state will be looking for your input on that.
And I do see, and there's various questions around available links. One in particular for adult and family home pilots that were mentioned. So if you're in the chat and you have any information, there was also a request for, I saw data reports on zip codes and services provided and utilized.
Yep.
But I guess, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say a couple of things. So the links that I provided at the end of my presentation should be somewhat helpful at more a broader level. But in terms of data at the local level, I encourage you to go to the data dashboard for aging. And I can, after I'm done speaking, put a link up to it, because what's really exciting is the state has also broken it up where they can into local level data so that you can do exactly what you're talking about, use it for local planning purposes. So again, this is something that I think there's still tremendous opportunity to continue developing, but hopefully the data dashboard for aging will be helpful. And what I'm going to do when I'm done talking is I will put each of these links I've talked about into the chat. So links to data dashboard for aging, links to a fact sheet on what was included in the budget, what was included in something called the Home and Community-Based Services Spending Plan, which is part of the budget funded by the federal government. All these different nuances, but it gives you links to more information on each of these areas. Finally, I saw the question about adult family homes. That is an example of this new pilot at the Department of Aging that hasn't yet been launched. We're waiting for funding to get finalized from the federal government as part of this spending plan. And the Department of Aging will be sending out information as soon as they have the plans about stakeholder engagement and how to get that launched.
And our final question, are there guidelines and or supports for senior ADU conversions?
Great question. I myself feel like I need to really increase my knowledge on the accessory dwelling unit. So it's a great question. I can offer to look into that and see if there's any guidelines, and I can send them to Wendy so that she can send them out to the group afterwards. So thank you. I appreciate the great questions.
I'm sorry, we do have a little bit more time, and we just got
Sure,
one more.
absolutely.
What's available for seniors whose income is too high for low income housing, but too low for market rate housing? Not housing in the boonies either.
Yes.
We're talking centralized housing.
Okay, I completely agree. And I don't think there is a lot right now. I think this is one of these examples of a quote unquote opportunity that is really critical. And we don't want people to impoverish themselves to try and find housing. So thank you for that. I think one of the the proposal for an affordable rental assistance fund for older adults and people with disabilities is one option, but I believe that's more targeted to lower income population. you're absolutely right. For people who are kind of in this missing middle, affordable, accessible housing is a crisis. And I think we all see it in our communities. And I think it's something that if you all can continue to focus on and think through some promising opportunities, that is something the state would welcome.
Well, Sarah, and I just want to acknowledge, I know we didn't get to everyone's thoughts or questions in the chat, but we are capturing the chat. And again, a reminder that we have small listening sessions later this afternoon. So keep those thoughts and ideas and juices flowing. I want to sincerely thank you, Sarah, for your time this morning and being so brave to go over that information that can be hard to digest. So thank you for your bravery and your support on this morning. And if we all give, some love and joy to Sarah on this Friday morning for all of her assistance. We've captured everyone, and I'd like to hand the floor back to Wendy and Quayle.
Thank you all so much. It was an honor to be here.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Shawnee. Some love for Shawnee too.
Yes, thank you,
Moderating.
Shawnee. Yay.
Very much appreciate you both. Okay, so Quayle, we're doing okay with time. So this might be a chance for us all to kind of stretch our mental muscles and maybe a good time to reflect. We can ask folks who maybe didn't have a chance to get their thoughts in as Shawnee and Sarah were speaking, or questions in. You can put them in the chat now.
Yes, Wendy, we are having a extremely robust dialogue in the chat. Lots of people. We have an incredible amount of people who are experts who are asking really good questions. And I just want to remind everybody, these questions are important to the process. It doesn't necessarily mean that today we have the answers, but the questions actually stimulate the best effort we can have on having the voices and the work around older adults for the master plan for aging happen. If we have to ask these questions consistently to push the bar to how good this can be. So we're all doing a really good job here. We're getting a lot of good questions. We're also getting links. People are putting in links. We all have information that we can bring to the process. Again, we don't have to reinvent things that are already there. But also, if there are things that are there, how are we going to improve them, and what's inspiring us as we have these conversations? So please go ahead and put in, your questions. One of the questions I would like for people to start thinking about as you're adding your comments and questions into the chat is what you're hearing, what you're not hearing. Some of you are doing that already. Hey, what about this? And what about that? And what are we doing about this particular thing? Or why are we spending so much time on this when we're losing our direction on some other things? And I think that's the tricky part here. So please go ahead and drop your questions in, your comments, continue to stimulate the dialogue. I also want to remind for those of you who are using your phone, and thanks Karen for flagging this again for us, but if you press 9, you can raise your hand. I think it's *9 or to raise your hand. So please just go ahead and raise your hand if you don't have the capacity to use the chat. And at this moment, if there's someone who hasn't had a chance to use the chat, if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand or jump in and ask your question before we move to the next segment.
Yeah, we have just a moment for those of you who aren't able to use the chat.
Someone just wrote, the importance of no wrong door model will be critical with all the funding and frameworks out in the universe. Collaboration will be key. Very
Absolutely.
good. Very good.
Absolutely. That's actually a good segue to our next session. So I think we'll go ahead and move on.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's time to move on to the local implementation panel. This will be a session that will focus on the work that's underway here in Alameda County to advance positive changes that align with the Master Plan for Aging goals. I'm going to share my screen here so you can see. We've asked a number of people who are leading some of these local efforts to give us an overview of the projects that are underway in their respective areas. We haven't intentionally used the 5 bold goals to organize this panel, but as we go along, I think you'll see that the goals are reflected in the information you're getting. There is one master plan goal, however, Health Reimagined, that isn't directly addressed today because it deserves a forum of its own. So we've made a decision to bring another forum to you all next year in late winter or early spring. So look for an event announcement next year. And we will be pulling together a forum that focuses on Health Reimagined and all of the local implementation of CalAIM and the Medi-Cal expansions and some of the other health initiatives that Sarah spoke about. So now let me introduce our panelists. Their full bios are in the program, in the forum program, so and you can read them there. So really briefly, Faith Battles is the Assistant Agency Director for Alameda County Social Services Agency, Department of Adult and Aging Services. Tanya Bustamante is Aging Services Manager for the City of Berkeley. James Treggiari is the Executive Director at Legal Assistance for Seniors. Michael Galvan is the Executive Director at Community Resources for Independent Living. And Andrea Dodge coordinates older adult and life care planning programs for Alameda County Public Health Department. And Vanessa Baker is the Older Adult Services Division Director for Alameda County Behavioral Health. So welcome, panelists. I'm happy that you're here today. Each of today's panelists lead a part of the collaborative work that is coordinated through the Alameda County Age-Friendly Council, which you'll hear more about in a minute. And each of these people has a really unique perspective of their own to share. We've asked them to tell us briefly about the work that's underway and what's been achieved, what's still to be done, what gaps they see, and what they really want to see happening next year in 2022. I think that, you know, we aren't going to be able today to bring you an all-inclusive list, but you'll get the high points. And I want to remind all of you in the audience that we really want to hear from you. As you hear about the work that's underway, use the chat to share your thoughts, your ideas, your observations, and your questions too. We'll have a bit of time, I think, to answer some questions today, but really, like Quayle said, all of your questions are so important. We will capture them. We will endeavor to address them in the report and bring answers forward, but they're also informing us about what you need to know and what we need to be better about communicating about. So without further ado, now I will hand the floor to our first panelist, Faith Battles. And Faith, I'm going to share your slide here and you can get started.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Nod your head if you can hear me, Wendy. Okay, very good. So I'm gonna start my little timer here because we are on a very strict time limit on my phone. I wanna make sure that I honor the time. So thank you for having me. I'm Faith Battles, as was mentioned, and I lead the Department of Adult and Aging Services here in Alameda County. I'm here to give you a little bit of information about the age-friendly council here in Alameda County. Most of the people, if all of the people that are presenting on this panel are members of the council. And it's a forum for talking about resources and services to be able to improve the lives of seniors in the county. Go ahead to the next slide, Shani, or Wendy, whomever. Okay, so in 2021, we decided as this leadership group in this council to identify areas that we wanted to prioritize our work in for the council for the year. And we worked really closely with looking at that master plan of aging to see how the goals that we would create would align with that. And also with the World Health Organization and AARP's 8 domains of living for seniors. I'll go through them quickly. One is outdoor spaces and buildings, then you have transportation, then you have housing, you have social participation, which is happening today. You also have respect and social inclusion, work and civic engagement, communication and information, and community and health services. I always have to be reminded. So our priorities are listed right here. And I'll just talk with you a little bit about some of the things that we really wanted to focus on. Let's go to the next slide. All right, in terms of equity and inclusion, we wanted to make the work of the council be very clear about our efforts to be inclusive and to think of everybody at the table, even if they are not present for the table. So one of the things that we thought we would do, which has worked out really well for us, was to be intentional about talking about equity and inclusion regularly at the council with whomever was invited to the council. So we had a few discussions about equity and inclusion, and it was an opportunity for people to be pretty transparent, exercise some vulnerability to talk about what's not happening, what needs to happen, and how to bring more people to the table and be more conscious. So for racial equity, we talked about, for example, elder abuse and mistreatment in the Latinx and African-American community. That was really interesting. We added some discussion as well about Asian hate crimes, which is a very powerful discussion for us. And we talked about health equity in terms of the vaccine distribution and the availability of the vaccine to seniors that could get out of their homes or could not. We also talked about disability rights. We also talked about homophobia, ageism, social equity, and employment. That was a really interesting one about employment for folks that are 55 and older. We're working with the public health department to more formally work on that. In terms of data, we've been able to participate in having discussions around these issue briefs that come out, which are fantastic. And I think people should really pay attention to those issue briefs. They have an issue guide, they have a longer issue brief, they have talking points, and they have a fact sheet. And in that, so far, we've done 2 fully packaged ones on social isolation, suicide prevention, and the others that we're working on are housing recommendations, Alzheimer's and dementia-related dementias, fall prevention, employment, and disaster preparedness. So look out for those. We continue to promote the use of data in the county. The data informs the services that we should be providing, lets us know where we're not having enough services, and certainly what the services that we do offer are being utilized mostly. In terms of new partnerships, we've expanded according to the Board of Supervisors suggestion around who we should bring to the table. One interesting one is that we added to the table having Dorsey Nunn with legal services for prisoners and with children to the table. There's been a good number of individuals that have been incarcerated that have been released back into the community. Their time has been served, or due to COVID, their time has been shortened with different measures to make them be accountable for their behaviors in the community. And a lot of those individuals are older. So having that partnership, also wanting to have LGBTQ representation on the council and homeless representation for folks that serve that population. Let's go to the next slide. I have a minute and a half left to go through what we're looking for as we go ahead. Our previous speaker did a lot of information sharing with you all about those particular goals. And I wanted to tell you what I'm really excited about for Alameda County specifically. In January, the age for APS services will drop from 65 to 60. So we will start serving individuals that are 60 and up instead of 65 and up. That's something that is significant. Also in 2022, the governor in the budget has agreed to allow Medi-Cal for individuals that are undocumented or are not citizens of this country, 50 and up, as I understand it. That's significant because in order for you to participate in in-home supportive services, you have to be full scope Medi-Cal. And if you don't have Medi-Cal and you're undocumented, you can't benefit from those services. So we anticipate a good number of individuals coming to receive our services. The backup provider system for IHSS, we're working really closely to try to make sure that we have room for individuals that do want to be IHSS providers. We know that there are not enough individuals that want to do that. And typically individuals that have family or friends or community that want to be an IHSS entry-level type job that's really good for folks that are interested in the caregiving profession to be able to enter. So the issue is, if you know someone that wants to get into that field or that is connected to you, I'm the person that they should talk to. One more quick thing that I think is important is the investment in the APS expansion. The state gave a significant amount of money to counties to be able to shore up for the expansion of APS significantly. We need to hire staff that will be able to work the cases for the expansion in the age. Just having 5 years of a younger population enter APS eligibility is going to be significant. So my time is up and I don't want to interfere with other people's time. I'll do my best to answer questions in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith. I appreciate that very much. Tanya, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. As mentioned earlier, my name is Tanya Bustamante, and I manage our Aging Services Division, which is one of several divisions of the City of Berkeley's Health, Housing, and Community Services Department. And I'm also going to start my timer now. I'm here to give you a brief overview of what the county has done in terms of creating its age-friendly plan. So as many of you may know, the Age Friendly Initiative is an initiative established by the World Health Organization to create and sustain communities that are livable for people of all ages. The AARP is the national entity that supports this initiative in the US. Membership in the network of age-friendly states and communities means that a community's elected leadership has made a commitment to actively work with residents, with community members, and local advocates to make their town, their city, their state an age-friendly place to live. So becoming an age-friendly community means that the community or the county or the state builds on existing efforts that are already in place and commits to developing an action plan. Alameda County applied to be a member of this age-friendly network in 2019. The county conducted an assessment of older adults countywide to identify gaps and also identify resources. And we've now drafted a 5-year plan that identifies these gaps and where we hope to also support existing resources. The effort has been spearheaded by the county's Age-Friendly Council, which Faith has mentioned and has shared with you already. Consists of various representatives from various entities across the county. Next slide, please. So our Alameda County Age-Friendly Plan will have a focus on the unincorporated areas of the county. And this is because there are several cities in our county that have developed their own age-friendly plan. And also unincorporated areas are under the purview of the county. Unincorporated areas can be considered quote unquote civic infrastructure deserts. They have no governing board, and so they lack a body that can coordinate and oversee infrastructure improvements and be able to implement local ordinances. The priority areas that we have initially identified in the county's age-friendly plan are as follows. Digital divide and digital literacy, which is actually an area that we have seen highlighted during the pandemic as a great gap and a great need among our older adult community. Housing, of course, is a big issue, as we've already heard. Dementia services, disaster planning, outdoor spaces, and transportation. and the last two, respect and social inclusion, community and health services. So these priority areas roughly align with the World Health Organization's age-friendly domain areas, as well as with the bold goals of the state's master plan on aging. Next slide, please. So here's a snapshot of our age-friendly planning timeline. After the county conducted an assessment and focus groups countywide in 2019, our planning process was put on hold in 2020 due to COVID. But earlier this year, we did pick up on the work that we had already started. So in the spring, we acquired an intern to assist us with assessing the data and compiling information to start to put the plan together. In the summer, this intern spent time analyzing the survey data and began to identify themes that came up. In September, we met with unincorporated area community partners to discuss a process where we would be able to elicit additional community input. Since we really wanted to focus on unincorporated areas, we really wanted to get even more feedback from older adults in those communities. Earlier this fall, we began to draft the plan and we distributed it for initial feedback and also revised an additional survey that went out with community partners to begin getting more input. And that survey was distributed in November. We've incorporated additional feedback in the plan from our partners and community members in these past several weeks. And next month, in January, we plan to submit a draft age-friendly plan to the County Board of Supervisors for their review and approval. So this is what the process has been so far. Again, this plan is in draft form, and we are highlighting the gaps and the resources that we've been able to identify from our community partners and community members. And we look forward to getting even additional feedback from either you all directly or through our council members to finalize this plan moving forward. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you, Tanya. And I so appreciate our panelists doing a good job at keeping to the time schedule. I really do. So let's move on to James. Jim, the floor is yours.
Good morning. I will start my timer. Welcome, everyone. I'm James Tajari, and I am working on the Age-Friendly Council's housing priorities, which there are many. And I think, like Sarah and others have said, I'm going to use a lot of acronyms and talk about a lot of things. And I apologize for the speed, and I will try to do my best to explain them. Next slide. And so I think important, although we're talking about the master plan on aging, it is really important when talking about housing in the pandemic to mention the eviction moratoriums and ERAP, the emergency rental assistance programs. These are two efforts that are really focused in the pandemic on supporting older adults or people who are at risk of losing housing. They've been incredibly effective. However, with the moratoriums, the long-term viability of the protections are still unclear. And with ERAP, it has been slow to roll out. And there are concerns about equity in terms of accessing those funds and making sure that's getting into the hands of community members that need it. And I should say to start, we realize that housing is just so incredibly tenuous at this point, and there's going to be we really are going to welcome a lot of community feedback. We're in the midst of tons of projects, but we know that for the individuals who are experiencing housing insecurity, hearing about all of these efforts, if it's not reaching their doorstep is hard, and we want to make sure that that's how we're making the connections. In terms of the master plan on aging and the age-friendly council's work, we're really taking a holistic look when we talk about housing. So we're talking about renters, homeowners, people who are utilizing shelter for temporary housing, homelessness. And so we are looking across the spectrum in terms of supports and programs that we can be informing and help implement to more fully sustain and support older adults. Locally, we're shaping the implementations of projects that intersect older adults and housing, including Project Home Key and Measure W, which is focused on providing additional supports for folks who are experiencing homelessness or are at risk of homelessness. Supporting data and care delivery needs for older adults, specifically in the AC3 Alameda County Coordinated Care efforts. And so that's in recognition that even though a program may not have older adults in its title or as its main focus, there are many programs that older adults need to access and utilize that we want to be informing the process to make sure that they are easily accessible and can be utilized by older adults effectively and easily. We're also working on advancing legislation that protects homeowners from foreclosure that would leave them destitute. So there is a type of foreclosure, which basically no equity, if there is a foreclosure, really is guaranteed to go back to the homeowner. We're working with legislators to try to change that at a state level. Next slide, please. Supporting a new housing effort that's very exciting, the Alameda Wellness Center, a multi-unit housing community providing medical respite and supportive services to formerly homeless elders. We're looking at what supportive services can be put in place that will be most effective in supporting that population. Exploring deferred tax property options for elders who are unable to make their property tax payments. Working to expand local shelter standards to more directly address the needs of older adults in their care. And Home Safe has been a really successful local program that pairs case management, legal services, and emergency dollars to preserve and stabilize housing for elders experiencing housing instability or homelessness. So as you can see, like I said, with the local efforts, we're really looking across the spectrum in terms of renters, homeowners, those experiencing homeless, those who are temporarily housed. And really, housing, we know, means so much more than the four walls, that it needs to be paired with supportive services and services that are going to ensure that that housing can be long-term and not a temporary fix to what needs to be a permanent solution. Next slide, please. So I'm going to move quickly through this, as you can see, and I think as will not be a shock to anyone who is here today, there are a lot of gaps in the protection. So rather than go through them one by one, I'm going to kind of give a summary in that for all of the recent investments and work that is underway, and it is so exciting, and I think we have so many opportunities in front of us. There are still so many gaps in the system that should be in place to protect older adults from losing their homes. We still don't have a comprehensive plan to address racial inequalities in securing and retaining housing for renters and homeowners, or for supporting people after the moratorium and ERAP ends, and for breaking down the silos so people can get the services they need to prevent a crisis. And that really needs to just be a broad spectrum of supports and services. So as you can see, if you've had a little bit of time and are able to read some of the bullet points on this list, you know, I think a lot of them are obvious and needed, and really create that, what we're talking about, that ecosystem that supports housing as a holistic and long-term solution for older adults. Next slide, please. So in our goals for 2022, I think given the previous slides, they won't be surprising. Ensuring access to ERAP and other programs that will help address pandemic-related housing crisis needs is a priority. The priority right now is keeping people in their homes. Strong advocacy for post-moratorium and post-ERAP services to support older adults who were stabilized by these services, but then become housing insecure again. Coordinating local program implementation, expanded case management, rental housing acquisition and rehab, to tap one-time funding that is coming down from the state due to budget surplus. Pass that foreclosure legislation that I mentioned earlier and inform and shape implementation around Master Plan on Aging housing initiatives, AC3 transitions into CalAIM and Measure W. And last slide. And then in the long-term objectives, kind of more of wish lists, and an attorney for every eviction case in Alameda County. This is a model that's proven extremely effective in other counties like San Francisco that really does keep people housed. So that's a very proven and effective model. Helping renters and homeowners navigate post-COVID housing crisis with a strong equity lens. We know that older adults, communities of color have had, have not had access to stable housing, and that needs to be addressed. And COVID exacerbated that, but that has been an ongoing chronic problem that needs addressing during COVID, post-COVID. Moving the other projects forward that we mentioned, shelter standards, property tax planning, and the wellness center model, and lastly, ensuring that the Medi-Cal expansion includes supportive services that have a strong focus on stabilizing housing. So that's the quick version, and I'm looking forward to the forum to hear back from community members.
Definitely. Thank you, Jim. Next up, Michael Gelda.
Okay, here we go. We're an emerging aging and disability resource connection. We haven't gotten full designation yet. We originally had it back in 2014, but then we reinvented ourselves. And it's the SIL in Berkeley, Krill in Southern Alameda County, and the AAA. And I just want you to know that in that combination, we've overcome one of the great barriers on services. Persons with disabilities are not competing with seniors. I mean, and that's all. We've got to move beyond that. And seniors oftentimes are persons with disabilities. And it's like you take housing. Both groups need housing that is affordable and accessible, so it's a lot of the same needs. So next slide, please. Also, we have the 2 success stories. Let you know what we do. Well, Walter here, if you notice, was a homeless man, was a consumer here at Krill for about 2.5 years before we helped him get into housing. We did that through a connection we have with the Housing Authority in Alameda County, and that's through the mainstream voucher, where you have to be homeless, a person with a disability, and under 60. And we were able to do that, get him a voucher, help him get a voucher, then help him through home stretch, get all his deposit monies and furniture. He's very happy now, but it does take 3 years, so we need to increase reduce the time there. Another one is, for example, Janice, who was referred by her local church to us here, and she has a speech impediment. So we were able to get her an iPad with speech impediment devices so that she can now use the phone. But then we also have a program with Chromebooks, and so we were able to get her a Chromebook with training. And she's been on several meetings that I've been in. So it's just wonderful to see this woman who had really become isolated reaching out into the community. Next slide, please. Where are we going to grow now that we've done this? Well, we need a consultant really to help us, to keep us on track. Most of us are, well, all of us do this work right now in ADRC in addition to, not instead of. And so it's really important to have somebody who will keep us accountable. The next thing we also need to do is recruit more member agencies and persons for our advisory board so we can get more direct input. And if you're interested in being on our advisory board, just let me know. You can put it in the chat, okay? Also, we are working on a website which will detail the work of the ADRC that would be user-friendly, remembering that many of us who are elders are not that great on computers. So we can get along, but it needs to be user-friendly. Also a common database. This is a great struggle. This is all over the state of how to do this, being mindful of HIPAA regulations and also confidentiality issues. But we do need a common database so that consumers can move easily between the different agencies. And we need to outreach more to our consumers to let them know that we exist. Next slide. Well, what do we want to do next? Well, we have to work on more affordable and accessible housing. Have we heard that somewhere before? It is absolutely necessary. Here in Southern Alameda County, one of our great challenges has been when individual owners sell their complexes to a corporation back in the Midwest or back east, and all of a sudden the rents go up out of the world, and we've had people who've lived in their apartments for 40, 50 years homeless. It's just amazing, it's just awful. We need to improve our home care through IHSSS and to redo and beef up our private pay registries. We have a lot of people in Alameda County who do not qualify for Medi-Cal for all the good reasons. They have sufficient income, but then they have to find a caregiver. And usually those people who can afford it don't live in the same areas where those people who would be caregivers live. So you might be in Mission San Jose and you're interviewing people from Oakland and they're going, that's a little too far to travel. So it's just, we really need to improve that. At Transition Services, we've been really working on that this year. We've got together our brochures out there. Here at Krill, we hired a full-time person to simply work on transition, helping people move from skilled nursing facilities or hospitals to home. Expand our computer skills, distribution of technology, because the digital divide is here, and we've got to really go over because it's only going to get worse. Common database, we're still working on that, and an increase in direct services through using the no wrong door approach. We really need to work on that because we want people to understand that when they call us, they will get the help they need. That's what I have.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Yeah, and I think that no wrong door has been mentioned by a number of attendees here today, so thank you. Okay, let's move to Andrea Dodge. You're up next.
Thank you, Wendy. Again, I'm Andrea Dodge with the Public Health Department Chronic Disease Program, and I manage older adult and life care planning programs here. Next slide, please. Okay, so as has been mentioned many times already today, the COVID pandemic has exposed and exacerbated existing problems faced by older adults, including inequitable access to digital resources. And at the same time, many resources for older adults are being moved online. To gather more information about these gaps in our county, the Age Friendly Council started a digital inclusion work group that is co-chaired by myself with Shawnee Reynolds and Wendy Peterson. And this effort aligns with the Master Plan for Aging Goal 3, digital inclusion, inclusion and equity, not isolation, and specifically strategy B, closing the digital divide, that seems to sort of pop up throughout some of the other goals as well. In April of this year, the group launched a countywide older adult digital needs assessment survey. The survey was made available in 9 languages, and it asked about gaps in access to the internet and electronic devices, and the need for educational support to use those devices. To disseminate the survey, the group collaborated with a wide range of county and community partners to disseminate paper and electronic surveys to over 72,000 residents. The work group also conducted 2 focus groups with providers and long-term care facilities, and the survey closed on October 31st. Next slide, please. So data analysis is being led by Liz Maker at the Public Health Department Community Assessment Planning and Evaluation, or CAPE unit, and supported by Akash Singh at the Chronic Disease Program. We included questions about demographics and tracked the results to see if the responses were proportionate to the county population over age 50. And because response rates from the Latinx community were somewhat low as compared with the county's Latinx population over age 50, the work group collaborated with the Age Friendly Council community that is working on the Age Friendly County plan that Tanya described earlier, and Latinx community leaders to try to increase that response rate with a shorter survey to be administered in person by community members. And that piece has continued after the larger survey closed. So you can see on the slide that over 1,400 surveys were returned. And of those, more than half were paper copies. And then of those who reported their income on the survey, 45% had incomes lower than $2,000 a month. So this tells us that we had representation from many seniors who are most in need of services. The results are showing many gaps that we expected and some that we didn't, such as that smartphones are the most often used device as opposed to laptops, desktops, or tablets. And that is particularly clear among those with incomes lower than $2,000 a month. We also found that internet access at least once a week is available to only 70% of seniors with incomes lower than $2,000 a month, as opposed to 92% with higher incomes. And that people ages 75 and older are less comfortable with telehealth than other age groups, and that increases with age. Those results are not particularly surprising, but it's really helpful for us to have that data that shows what's happening in Alameda County as we move forward. I also want to point to the comments that are up on the screen. Respondents submitted many comments that we are still analyzing, and those included in this slide are representative of those. And then we also received comments about the needs for more secure devices and secure access to the internet. There is much more quantitative and qualitative data, and we are continuing to analyze it. The group will share the final survey results with a full analysis and recommendations in early 22, and those will be available at the link shown on this slide, and I will also put it on the chat. Next slide, please. So in terms of priorities for 2022, we want to start by considering best practices to promote solutions based on the survey results. And we do have amazing examples here in our county. Many organizations stepped up to address the issue as soon as it became clear that there was increased need. And this includes members of the digital inclusion work group as well as others. These efforts will inform any work that we do to develop recommendations based on the survey results. There's also potential funding from state and federal sources that I want to go over very briefly. California's current budget apportions $50 million to the Access to Technology program for older adults and adults with disabilities pilot program. Additionally, the California Department of Technology recently launched the Middle Mile Initiative to increase open access to high-speed internet in underserved communities. Their initial effort funded 18 projects statewide, including one project in Oakland. And I will also put the link to that in the chat for more information, but we'll be watching that because that was just their initial effort. And then finally, there are 3 federal bills that have potential to support the work. But right now, we're very focused on the Infrastructure Act, which many of you have probably heard about. It's been in the news that it was signed several weeks ago, and that includes $65 billion to improve high-speed internet access and digital literacy training, among other things at the national level. So we'll be watching that. And finally, Alameda County leads the Bay Area Digital Inclusion Coalition, which is a regional work group to consider ways to collaborate to advance the work. And that will continue into 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrea. And now we move to Vanessa. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I am Vanessa Baker. I am the Older Adult Services Division Director with Alameda County Behavioral Health. And I also am a member of the Age Friendly Council. And today I am going to talk with you about the Embracing Aging Workforce Initiative. And this is the committee that I chair as part of the council. And as I talk and I move through this presentation, I will just highlight how our work really aligns with the Master Plan for Aging 5 bold goals. So first, I just want to start briefly by just sharing what the Embracing Aging Workforce Training Initiative is. So this is an initiative through the Age Friendly Council in partnership with the University of California, San Francisco, and their amazing Department of Geriatrics Optimizing Aging Collaborative. That's a lot of words, but basically what it means is that UCSF has this wonderful, currently developed curriculum, information that focuses on how to work well with a geriatric or older adult population. And through the Age Friendly Council and this initiative, our goal is to bring this training to as many county agencies and workforce members as possible. So early in 2021, we launched a needs assessment to gather information about what interests providers, from clinicians to first responders. It was a wonderful time to seek out information, of course, considering everything that had been going on with the pandemic. And we received a lot of very helpful information. And after we conducted that needs assessment and we continued to work together, we identified a pilot group to launch this training and we successfully launched our first training session in October of 2021. The group that we're working with right now is behavioral health, but again, the goal is to reach many, many agencies, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I also want to highlight that this curriculum, it focuses on what's called a 4M framework focus. And you'll see it here: mentation, mobility, medication, and arguably the most important, what matters. And I would say that the 4M framework is really key because as we've moved through identification of the curriculum and the training, it really does align with the Master Plan for Aging goals. So our ongoing efforts are to launch additional trainings, as I've mentioned, ongoing, and then also to look at data. We can't forget, we received information through the needs assessment, but we also want to know, do these trainings matter? Are they making a difference? So we want to look and work with UCSF around evaluation, review, and analysis, really to lead to improvements in the training and then developing best practices. Next slide, please. So in terms of the gaps, I mentioned these as gaps, but they're also opportunities. And as I continue to mention, we want to identify additional training groups. Currently, with one training underway, we are also working very closely with EMS, or emergency medical services, and also with our in-home support services to launch trainings to those particular groups. Again, we want to do this structured and well so that we can tailor the curriculum to meet each group's needs. And this really is about equity to stakeholders. Training and expansion. So we don't want to just offer the training this year, next year. We want this to be ongoing. And UCSF is able to offer this training through a grant. So we really are interested in exploring extensions or ways that we can look at a train the trainer model to continue these trainings. And again, as we move forward, I think all of us on this council are really interested in making sure that the 4M framework can really be incorporated into our general work. So that speaks to accountability. Next slide, please. So our priorities, as I can't say it enough, we want to launch multiple trainings. This is about local geriatric expertise. We want to make sure that anyone in our system, all of our systems, from social services to healthcare to CBOs, has a geriatric expertise. So they know how to work with older adults at any stage of their life. We want to review data and partner with UCSF. We want to incorporate the 4M framework. And then lastly, the alignment with the Master Plan for Aging. And I just want to emphasize this very quickly. When we look at this training initiative, in terms of, for example, if you are providing a training on mentation, so individuals receive training on how to work with someone who has early onset dementia, late stage dementia, that certainly aligns well with Health Reimagined. So working with someone to provide needs, and again, also with caregiving that works. So it's really around the individual needs for that person, understanding what dementia looks like for that individual and how we can provide care for that person through that framework. And again, it aligns with the Master Plan on Aging. So each of these pieces, and I can talk about this more when we have the separate forums, but it's really a beautifully aligned process for the 4M framework and the Master Plan for Aging. And we're just, hopefully when we have another training next year, many individuals on this call will have been able to receive the wonderful trainings through the Embracing Aging initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists. I want to let you all know, everyone here, that the slides, it was a lot that we heard. The slides, though, are available on the conference website at seniorservicescoalition.org. And so you can review those. So I think I want to turn to the audience now. You've heard about the work that's underway and what we think are the gaps, but are we right? What do you think? Do you have questions? What's been left out? Who's been left out? And what do you think the county and its collaborative partners need to know as they finalize the county's age-friendly plan and as they set priorities for their work next year in 2022? Please use the chat to tell us. For those of you who don't have access to the chat, write it down and share it when we get to the listening sessions, which is pretty soon. We have just a few minutes for Q&A. And as I look at the chat to pull out a question or two, panelists, let me ask you, we heard a little bit about how stakeholders can engage to inform and advance the local work. I think that Michael mentioned he's looking for advisory committee members. So that's one opportunity. But if any of you have other suggestions around engagement, because we have you know, a wealth of knowledge, wisdom, and lived experience in the community, how can they get involved?
Wendy, I'm seeing an incredible amount of resources that people are putting in the chat.
Yes.
And I wanted to kind of build a little bit on that question that you're asking, because a lot of times what happens is we're very used to working within the system that we currently have.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to challenge us to think about what needs to be done to alter some of what we already have. So that's not the finality. I mean, this is huge opportunity we have here with the Master Plan for Aging to begin to alter and improve what we already have. So for those of you who are seeing some of the resources that we have in here and that folks are adding, feel free to jump in and say, hey, that's a great resource, but you know what would make it better? You know, or you know what else we could use? Or how about expanding it to X or Y or Z? Like there's a lot of opportunity we have to add our feedback on what we're seeing in the chat and what's inspiring us around what we're saying here. So go ahead and put in the chat anything that you see that's missing, something that's like getting you inspired and pumped up. Just go ahead and put that in there and we're capturing all of it.
Great. Thank you, Quaylen. Thank you for that. And I see a question from Kester that I think we could answer, panelists. If no wrong door is important, why isn't it included as a goal in the plan? So, you know, I think maybe Tanya, Faith, and Michael could speak to that.
Well, I can speak to the ADRC is the attempt for no wrong door, the Aging Disability Resource Connection that we're in the process of lifting up in Alameda County. We're emerging, meaning we're at the very beginning of it, and there's a lot of work to do for that. So that's the beginning for Alameda County to be able to answer that particular question about the no wrong door, our involvement with the ADRC and the planning, our need to get a consultant and wanting to have more stakeholders at the table around those discussions, and Michael can speak to some of that. That's the attempt for the no wrong door. In terms of, it's hard for me to see the questions as I'm talking. In terms of, I do agree that it's kind of like drinking from a water hose, Kester Waters. You know, it is a lot of information. And your question is there an organization in the county that's universally recognized by all constituents as serving as providing overall coordination and leadership? I don't think that there's one particular organization in the county that's recognized for that, because every agency in the county has a different task. The councils and the various commissions and work boards all come together to be able to try to get everybody's feedback in one place before we launch things out. So no, there isn't one particular organization that would be drinking from a water hose. There's so many different needs, whether it's medical insurance, disability, housing. There's no one organization that specializes in that totally. So no, I would answer that. And I'm open to hear what other people have to say about it.
Faith, and I agree with what you're saying, that as the ADRC, we are trying to develop the no wrong door. That's our model, but we've run into some problems and challenges. one, the common database. You know, if we could figure out a common database that was met all requirements and didn't violate confidentiality in any way, it would make it so much easier to move consumers through different agencies without any, so they wouldn't have to refill all the papers out every time they go to a new agency. At the same time, then it's also, how do we develop our website, which again, you know, it's No Wrong Door is where it's aspirational, but we have that challenge then of, well, you know what, AAAs have one set of criteria, ILCs have another set of criteria, the county's going to have something else, and it's how do we get everybody together, and it takes time. I didn't realize how much time it would take. And in Alameda County, this is our second attempt at it. I know Wendy was also involved in our first attempt back at the early part of the last decade, but it just takes a lot of work, but it is what we need to do, because when our consumers call us, they're not asking to be said, oh, you need to call Legal Aid for Seniors, and here's the number. They're looking for somebody who can say, well, let me walk you through this and get you to the service that you need, and that's our goal.
Yeah, thank you. And I think about the picture that Sarah Steenhausen gave us of flying the plane while you're building it, and that is what the work looks like in some respects. And Kester, I really appreciate your input. I think it is time for us to move on, but I want to say, you know, gosh, there's such robust conversation happening in the chat, and also a lot of questions. And I do want to honor those questions, everyone. We'll be diving in as much as we can to answer them in the chat, but we will definitely be answering them in the report that comes out. So bear with us, and thank you for leaning in. I want to thank our panelists before we move on. Thank you to our panelists. We can give them all some love with our fingers and with applause. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all. So now we're going to move to the community perspectives session, which is, you know, what it really is the heart of today's meeting for us. We've been gathering your comments and your questions all morning, but now we're really turning the floor over to you with small group listening sessions. And but first, I'm going to hand the floor to Quaylee so she can let you know kind of what to expect as we go into it.
Thank you, Wendy. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read this because I really want to make sure that we all understand what's going to be happening when we get into the breakouts. So these listening sessions will happen in 10 separate Zoom breakout rooms. And so we've organized them around the 5 bold goals you've been hearing about all day. That includes housing for all ages and stages, health reimagined, inclusion and equity, not isolation, caregiving that works, and affording aging. Each breakout would have a facilitator who will lead you through a discussion. Now is the time to really lean in and tell us what you think. And also it's a time to hear perspectives from others, particularly people who are directly impacted. You know, we have lots of experts in the space, and the people who are impacted by what we're talking about today, some of our community members have taken the time to come into this space. And so we want to make sure we make space for those individuals to lean in as well. We are capturing all of your outputs, and we'll summarize and share them with the Aging Friendly Council and its partners, the healthcare agencies, social service agencies, county and state policymakers. We also will be using your dialogue and discussion, and you go into the breakout to influence and assure that the Senior Services Coalition for Alameda County, our policy and legislative plan for 2021 is a representative of your priorities of what we're hearing. So in a moment, you're going to be sent to your breakout rooms. We are assigning them randomly. So you could end up in any of these topics. We wanted you to know that if you find yourself in a room, just like if you go into a conference or when we're in real life, and it doesn't feel like a fit for you, it's okay to bounce back out, to leave the room. And there's a button that will say leave the room or leave the breakout, not leave the whole session. When you come back, you will be assigned another random room. However, just know that these issues are cross-sectional. There's an intersection. So it may be an opportunity for you to learn and engage in a space that you don't normally, around a topic that you don't normally engage around. So again, it's a dialogue, it's a discussion. And with that said, I am going to turn it over to Danielle to populate you into your room. There will be a facilitator to walk you through the dialogue. And I'm looking forward to everyone having the opportunity to have your voices heard. When we return, by the way, we will not do reporting out. There won't be a summary of what's happening. As you can imagine, we're going to spend about 20 to 25 minutes in the space. You will see some reminders coming across the screen for the facilitator, but it's good for you to use those reminders to understand what's happening in the space and the timing of things. So, okay, Danielle, take us to our spaces.
Welcome back. I see Quayle, you're back. We're sorry for the glitch in recording. I hope that, I think I just want to say to facilitators, as you pop back in, if you didn't remember to save your chat, you can save it now. It came along with you. Save it to a file on your computer, and then you can send it to me later.
And also, if anyone have anything that they want to add from your breakouts, just go ahead and put it in the chat now. It's perfectly fine. It's not too late to add your comments and questions and talk about, you know, what inspired you or what you thought was missing in your gold area. And also, if you want to make a comment on another goal, feel free to do that.
So is everyone back in? I think everybody's back from their rooms now. So we could get started with our reflecting forward. Quayle, do you want me to share the?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me get my controls in place. There we go. Okay, you got it.
Great. Well, this has been a very long morning, and I greatly appreciate everyone taking the time today to do some incredibly important work. And we're at that point now where we were thinking about, Wendy and I were thinking about, you know, what's a good way to kind of end this? And we realized that we're not really ending anything. You know, we're actually moving forward. And in thinking about moving forward, I wanted to ask you guys that, you know, knowing that the Master Plan for Aging is about planning for aging forward into 2030 and beyond, I was thinking that it would be a good time to take a moment and reflect forward by thinking about what you might do into the future, especially the near future, meaning like 2022. we're fixing this plane while we're, on it, and we have work that we still need to do simultaneously. So how might you, just this conversation I like to put out here, or you can put your answer in the chat, but open up the floor a little bit here and have people to talk about how might you do things differently than what you've done, even in the past or even this year, knowing that we have the master plan for aging that we're working on. What might you be doing differently? I mean, we're going to be still working on our budgets. We're still going to be doing our policy work. We still have to, run our programs. But are there some ideas or things that people have been thinking about in terms of thinking forward about how you can begin to implement or think differently about the master plan for aging and doing what we can to secure programs for older adults and people with disabilities? So might you open up your mics? Anyone who want to add some comments here about some things that you've been thinking about? I do know that I saw some ideas, by the way, in the chat, things like collecting information and making sure that information is equity centered and some other things. So
yeah, if I could,
yes,
I could offer my, as I did in my chat group, put my soapbox out, and I am going to continue lobbying for an overarching eliminate silos, not eliminate, that's not a good way to put it, but put something over the silos so that there is a uniformity of access and a uniformity of vision, a uniformity of, so that we can see the forest rather than continually spending our time on so many trees. It is, to me, the most important thing that this community could be addressing, because there is a wealth of services, there's a wealth of information, there's a wealth of people doing honest, good work, but finding them, if I look at myself as a senior sitting by myself in West Berkeley, East Oakland, anywhere, saying, how can I get da-da-da-da? There is no easy answer. It takes 20 phone calls, it takes digging and researching, and there must be a better way. When I hear that every agency has their own needs and their own way of doing things, what I'm hearing is we want to have more silos.
Thank you. That's really
more
good.
silos. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I am seeing Sally. Can you talk a little bit about what you put in the chat? That's really, I think it's a very good example of reflecting forward. Sally?
Yeah. I just recently became aware that some cities charge anywhere from $75 to $150 to install a handicap access sign in front of someone's home or apartment building. So this would affect people with disabilities who drive, seniors who are able still to drive or have, have a car. And that just doesn't seem right, in my humble opinion. Yes, there are some seniors who could afford to have that sign installed, but it just seems like it's a small fix that would help a lot of people. Because then, they can do their own errands and grocery shopping, until the point that they're no longer physically able to.
Thank you. Other
Yeah.
comments? Do I have any hands raised or anything? Other comments? Wendy, are you seeing anything in the chat?
Hi, it's Lisa
ahead,
from
Lisa.
Rebuilding Together. The one thing that around the issue of silos and communication is that it's a tension, because if you don't have smaller working groups, if it's really large, you can't get anything done. So it's natural to break things down into working groups, but then it becomes that tension of how does all that get cross communicated so that people know and can access the rich progress that's being made. So, and I think that that's a struggle among, I don't know that who, if anyone, has found the answer on how to do that, but it's certainly, if we're talking about sort of pre-flexion and going forward, it's a worthy goal, because I think we all suffer from the, on sort of both ends of that, trying to work it out. And then the other thing that I would add to that is once you have a sort of an umbrella group, then you also have that top down kind of structure, because you're going to have fewer people in an overarching agency. And so how to think about that, because I would suppose that it also would fit into some kind of equity issue as well. So we've got, it's a thorny, it's a monster of its own.
I see a lot of head nodding, and it seems like this is a very popular concern, and something that people see we could all greatly benefit from. Other comments?
And I see Janie Castillo put something in the chat about working to close the digital divide for seniors. And Janie, I don't know if you want to unmute and make a comment about that.
Thank you, Wendy. No, I just want to say that that can really change lives on so many levels for seniors. And I have seen it personally over the last year. When you place and you train a senior, they just grow in so many ways, and connecting them to family and friends. And so if we keep pursuing that and keep putting money behind it and making Wi-Fi affordable, which is, I think, is not caught up to passing out the devices yet, is making Wi-Fi affordable. I think that we are going to do great changes for our seniors and our disabled folks. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Other comments? Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Bill.
Oh, yes. I think, it's been a great morning. I really want to thank the committee and people who put this together. One thing, we have been talking primarily about the formal structure. I'd like to talk a little bit about the informal structure, and that is community-based CBOs, the faith community, volunteers, people who are users of the system. I think it would be very important to have their voices at the table as we plan and go forward. Again, I think here what we're about and what we vision for Alameda County, frankly, is so huge and so important. It's going to take all of us, and all of us means the community. And so that is both the professional side of the table as well as the informal network that I just mentioned. And I'm looking forward to see their involvement and their voices to a greater extent as we go forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. And you know what, Quayle, that makes me realize that we should be asking people, how can we help them to stay engaged? Maybe that's a question to ask. And, what's the best way, community members, for us to keep you engaged? Is it more meetings like this? Is it, making you aware of opportunities to join ongoing committees or advisory groups? What kind of things would work best for you? Is it surveys? And how would we do that? Via the email that we have for you now? since you registered for this event. Put that in the chat. Let us know. There's probably a lot of different answers to that from different people, right?
Yeah.
But that would be really great for us to know that, so we can keep people engaged going forward
I would
and
really,
continue to hear from you.
yeah, I would really like for people to add the response to that particular question in the chat. Just a quick brainstorm amongst us, ideas, maybe even examples of things that you all are doing in other networks that work. It doesn't have to just be brand new ideas, just things that you know that work. And it can be aspirational. It doesn't have to be, I mean, if it's some grand idea that we could be moving toward, that's fine too. How to stay connected? How can we stay connected?
Yeah. My aspirational idea is to actually be able to meet with you all in person sometime next year.
That would be wonderful.
You know, we may or may not be able to do that.
I just want to let everyone know that if you had a problem getting in your breakout or got knocked out of the session today, just a reminder, this is being recorded. So the recording will be available. So just be reassured you have not, you can go back and see anything that you think you missed.
You know, I just wanted to add, I actually, while I do love meeting with people in person, I think that the Zoom factor has enabled me to participate in far more important forums like this that I never would be able to do if we were doing them all in person. And that I found that the breakout groups, although there was only one, it was such a rich discussion, and I did get to meet a couple of people that I hadn't met before, and that there were some strategies that were put together about how to, you know, work together and do things outside of this forum. So, you know, I think that my preference in some ways going forward is to always have this as at least as an option, especially for a very large group, and to perhaps have more mixing and matching of different working groups in those separate sessions.
Thank you. Actually,
yeah, thank you,
Wendy. I think we have a few minutes to move into our wrap up.
Yes, it is that time, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. It's time to wrap up, and I've loved spending time with you all this morning, but we're going to get ourselves to work and roll up our sleeves now. I want to thank you all for your generosity in leaning in. We take it very seriously, this treasure that you've given us today. And your feedback and your questions and your concerns and recommendations and the chat and what you're saying about how you want to stay engaged. We're all gathering that together, and it will be contained in a report and used to inform the work of the Alameda County Council for Age-Friendly Communities and the county's age-friendly plan and the Senior Services Coalition's 2022 advocacy priorities. And we're also going to be sharing our report with the Department of Aging, as well as the California Collaborative for Long-Term Services and Supports, and other entities that really need to be informed about the perspectives, experiences, and wisdom of Alameda County stakeholders. So I want to, and I was going to share that screen for you, but then so you'll see it there. What we're going to be doing. And I want to thank you also for being with us today.
Okay, so reminder, the PowerPoint will be available and the recording. And thank you all so much. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, everybody.